It was supposed to be the perfect getaway, a much-needed vacation for Emily and me after a hectic year of work and personal commitments. We had planned this trip for months, envisioning ourselves lounging on sun-drenched beaches, exploring local cultures, and rediscovering the intimacy that had slipped through our fingers over the years. Little did I know this trip would unravel the secrets that had been festering beneath the surface of our seemingly idyllic marriage. Emily and I met in college and married soon after graduation. Our relationship had always been the envy of our friends, a picture-perfect couple who seemed to have it all together. But as we boarded the plane for our dream vacation, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. Emily had been distant lately, her once warm and inviting demeanor replaced by a cold, impenetrable facade. I chalked it up to work stress and hoped this trip would bring us closer again. The first few days were magical. We explored the picturesque streets of the coastal town, indulged in exquisite local cuisine, and spent lazy afternoons basking in the sun. Emily seemed to relax, her laughter more frequent and genuine, and I began to believe that this vacation was just what we needed to rekindle our connection. But then came the subtle signs, the little things that started to gnaw at my peace of mind. Emily would step away to take phone calls she claimed were from her office, her voice dropping to a hushed whisper. She would stay up late on her laptop, closing it quickly whenever I entered the room. I dismissed these as mere coincidences, not wanting to spoil the fragile harmony we were starting to rebuild. One evening, as we walked along the beach, the conversation drifted to our future plans. Emily talked about wanting to travel more, to experience life to its fullest. The next day, we decided to take a sunset cruise, a romantic evening that promised breathtaking views and intimate moments. As we boarded the boat, I noticed Emily was unusually quiet, her eyes darting nervously as if searching for something or someone. I brushed it off, determined to enjoy the evening. The cruise was everything we had hoped for. The sky transformed into a canvas of vibrant colors as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow on the water. We held hands, our fingers intertwined as if trying to mend the fractures in our relationship. But as the boat docked and the other passengers disembarked, Emily lingered behind. She seemed hesitant, almost as if she was waiting for the right moment to say something. Before I could ask her what was wrong, my phone buzzed with a message. I glanced at it, my heart stopping when I saw the name. Mark. Mark was a colleague of mine, someone I considered a friend, but his message was anything but friendly. It was a series of photos, each one more damning than the last. I shoved my phone back into my pocket, my mind racing with confusion and suspicion. I didn't dare open the photos again just yet. I wanted to confront Emily in a setting where I had the upper hand, not here in this beautiful place that now felt tainted. "What's wrong?" Emily's voice broke through my haze of uncertainty. I forced a smile, shaking my head. "Nothing, just work stuff," I lied, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Emily nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. As we walked back to our hotel, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I knew I had to get to the bottom of this, but I needed to approach it carefully. The last thing I wanted was to jump to conclusions without knowing the full story. And so, the vacation that was supposed to save our marriage became a silent battlefield, each of us carrying secrets and suspicions, the weight of which threatened to pull us apart even further. Little did I know the answers I sought were closer than I realized, waiting to shatter the fragile peace we were clinging to. Emily's behavior became more erratic. She was on edge, jumping at the sound of her phone, and her laughter, once genuine and warm, now seemed forced. I pretended not to notice, keeping my suspicions to myself as. We had a guided tour booked for the following day, exploring ancient ruins and learning about the local history. Emily seemed distracted, her eyes constantly scanning the crowd, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. I tried to engage her in conversation, but her responses were curt, her mind clearly preoccupied. That evening, back at our hotel, I decided it was time to confront Mark. While Emily was in the shower, I stepped out onto the balcony and called him. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Hey man, what's up?" Mark's voice was casual, but I could hear the tension beneath it. "Mark, what the hell is going on?" I kept my voice low, glancing towards the bathroom to make sure Emily couldn't hear me. "What were those photos about?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, the silence heavy and uncomfortable. "Look," I didn't want to be the one to tell you like this, Mark finally said. But you needed to know. Know what? My patience was wearing thin. Just tell me, Mark. He sighed. Emily and we've been seeing each other. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. I'm sorry, man. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, my worst fears confirmed. I struggled to breathe, the walls of the balcony closing in on me. How long? About 6 months, Mark admitted, his voice tinged with regret. I never wanted to hurt you, but Emily said things between you two were strained. I couldn't listen anymore. I ended the call abruptly, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and betrayal. 6 months. For half a year, Emily had been lying to me, sharing her life with someone else while pretending to be my loving wife. The sound of the shower stopping brought me back to reality. I needed to confront Emily, but not here. Not now. I needed a plan, a way to address this without causing a scene in a foreign country. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and walked back inside just as Emily emerged from the bathroom. Everything okay? She asked, toweling her hair dry. Yeah, just work stuff, I replied, forcing a smile. We need to talk, but it can wait until we're back home. Emily nodded, seemingly relieved that I wasn't pressing the issue. She climbed into bed and I joined her, lying awake long after she had fallen asleep, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had just learned. The rest of the trip passed in a blur. I went through the motions, pretending everything was fine while inside I was seething. Emily seemed to sense my withdrawal but didn't push, perhaps grateful for the temporary reprieve. Finally, the day came to fly back home. As we boarded the plane, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. This wasn't just the end of our vacation, it was the beginning of the end of our marriage. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. Things would never be the same again. The plane ride home was agonizingly long. Emily sat beside me, flipping through a magazine, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I watched her, anger simmering just beneath the surface. Every smile, every casual touch felt like a mockery. How could she sit there so calmly, knowing what she had done? When we landed, I could hardly wait to get off the plane. I needed space, needed to be away from her to think clearly. We collected our bags in silence, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. As we walked to the car, Emily finally broke the silence. Is everything okay? She asked, her voice tinged with concern. I forced a tight smile. Yeah, just tired from the trip. The drive home was equally silent. I kept my eyes on the road. Emily fiddled with her phone, occasionally glancing over at me, probably wondering what was going on in my head. She had no idea what was coming. Once we got home, I wasted no time. As soon as the door closed behind us, I turned to her, my expression hard. Sit down, Emily. We need to talk. She looked taken aback, but complied, sitting down on the couch. I remained standing, looming over her, letting my anger and resentment show. What's this about? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. I took a deep breath, feeling the rage boil over. I know about you and Mark. Her face went pale, her eyes wide with shock. What? How did you find out? Does it matter? I snapped. You betrayed me, Emily. You lied to me. You cheated on me, and you thought you could get away with it. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. I can explain, she stammered. Explain what? How you thought screwing my friend behind my back was a good idea? How you justified your lies every single day for 6 months? She started to cry, but her tears only fueled my anger. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean for it to happen. Didn't mean for it to happen? I shouted. You didn't mean to sneak around, to lie to my face, to make a fool out of me? Spare me your excuses, Emily. I'm done. She sobbed harder, but I was beyond caring. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice breaking. I want you out of my life. I want you to pack your things and leave tonight. Emily looked at me in disbelief. But where will I go? Not my problem, I said harshly. You should have thought about that before you decided to cheat. Now get out. She got up, trembling, and started to pack her things. I watched her, my heart a stone in my chest. She tried to say something as she left, but I slammed the door in her face, cutting off her words. For the first time in days, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. I had taken control, had confronted her and forced her to face the consequences of her actions. But as the adrenaline faded, the emptiness set in. I was alone, my marriage in shambles, my trust shattered. And as much as I wanted to pretend otherwise, I knew the road ahead would be long and painful. But for now, at least, I had made her pay. I sat down and opened a bottle of whiskey, pouring myself a generous glass. The first sip burned my throat, but the numbness it brought was a welcome relief. I needed to forget, even if just for a little while. As the night wore on, I found myself scrolling through the photos Mark had sent me. Each one was like a dagger to the heart, a painful reminder of the betrayal I had endured. How could they do this to me? How could Emily throw away everything we had built together for a cheap fling? I knew I needed to move on, but the wounds were too fresh, too raw. I grabbed my phone and without thinking dialed Mark's number. He answered on the second ring. "What do you want?" I growled, my voice thick with anger. "Look, man, I'm sorry," Mark began, but I cut him off. "Sorry? You think sorry is going to fix this? You destroyed my marriage, my life. I trusted you and you betrayed me. I know I messed up. I don't know what else to say." "There's nothing you can say," I snapped. "You're a pathetic excuse for a friend. I never want to see you again. Stay the hell away from me and stay the hell away from Emily." I hung up before he could respond, tossing the phone onto the couch. The conversation had done little to quell my anger, but at least I had made my position clear. Mark was out of my life, just like Emily. The next few days were a haze of anger and despair. I went through the motions at work, barely able to focus on my tasks. My coworkers noticed, but I brushed off their concerns with curt replies. I wasn't in the mood for sympathy or pity. I just wanted to be left alone. One evening, as I was sitting on the couch nursing yet another glass of whiskey, there was a knock at the door. I considered ignoring it, but the knocking persisted. With a sigh, I got up and opened the door to find Emily standing there, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "What do you want?" I asked coldly. "Please, can we talk?" she pleaded. "I need to explain." I stepped aside, letting her in. She stood in the middle of the living room, looking small and fragile. "Talk," I said, crossing my arms. "I know I hurt you," she began, her voice trembling. "And I know you probably hate me, but I need you to understand why it happened." "Why?" I laughed bitterly. "You think there's any excuse that could make this okay?" "No, but maybe you can understand. I felt so alone, so disconnected from you. We stopped communicating, stopped being there for each other. I was vulnerable, and Mark, he was there. It was a mistake, a horrible mistake, but I need you to know that I never stopped loving you." "You call this love? Sneaking around, lying to my face, sleeping with my friend? That's not love, Emily, that's betrayal." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but I quickly squashed it. I couldn't afford to be soft now. "I don't care how lonely you felt," I continued. "You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. There's no going back." Emily looked up at me, her eyes filled with despair. "Is there no chance for us? Can't we try to fix this?" I shook my head, my resolve firm. "No, Emily, there's nothing left to fix. You broke us beyond repair." She nodded slowly, accepting the finality of my words. Without another word, she stood up and walked to the door. As she reached for the handle, she turned back one last time. "I'm sorry," she whispered, then left. One evening, as I was about to pour myself another drink, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Claire, a mutual friend who had been close to both Emily and me. We hadn't spoken since the confrontation, and I had no desire to relive the betrayal with someone else. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hey, can we talk? I heard what happened and I'm really sorry. If you need anything, I'm here." I didn't want pity, but it was nice to know that someone cared. Reluctantly, I replied, "Sure, we can talk." Claire suggested meeting at a nearby coffee shop. I agreed, knowing that I couldn't keep drowning myself in alcohol forever. Maybe talking to someone who wasn't directly involved could help me make sense of the chaos. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Claire was already there, a concerned look on her face. She stood up to hug me, but I stiffened, not ready for physical comfort. "I'm really sorry about everything, Jake," she began, her voice gentle. "I can't imagine how hard this must be for you." It's been hell, I admitted, taking a sip of the coffee she had ordered for me. I feel like my entire life has been turned upside down. She nodded, her eyes sympathetic. I know Emily messed up, but she's been going through a lot too. I bristled at her defense of Emily, but I bit back my retort. What do you mean? She's been really struggling with work and feeling isolated. She confided in me a few times about how distant things had gotten between you two. She felt like she was losing you. So she found comfort in someone else, I said bitterly. Great way to fix things, Claire sighed. I'm not saying it was right, it was awful and wrong, but I think she was just desperate for connection. Well, she got what she wanted, I muttered. She connected all right. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of the situation hanging heavily between us. Claire reached out and placed her hand on mine, her touch warm and reassuring. I'm not here to defend her, Jake. I'm here for you. If you need anything, please let me know. Thanks, Claire, I said, my voice softening. I appreciate it. Claire's support was a lifeline, a reminder that there were people who cared about me, even if my marriage was falling apart. Over the next few weeks, Claire and I became closer. She checked in on me regularly, dragging me out of the house when I was too consumed by my own misery. Slowly, I started to feel a bit more like myself, though the pain of Emily's betrayal still lingered. After a particularly difficult day at work, Claire invited me over for dinner. I hesitated, not wanting to impose, but she insisted. When I arrived, she had prepared a simple but delicious meal, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of normalcy. As we sat on her couch after dinner, the conversation turned to lighter topics. We laughed about old memories, the tension easing as the evening wore on. At some point, I realized how close we were sitting, our shoulders touching. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw more than just a friend. Claire, I don't know what I would have done without you, I said quietly. She smiled, her eyes warm. You're stronger than you think, Jake. You're going to get through this. In that moment, something shifted between us. I leaned in, hesitating for just a second before kissing her. She kissed me back, softly at first, then with more intensity. It felt right. We pulled back, both of us breathing heavily. Are you sure about this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. Yeah, I am. That night marked the beginning of something new. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when guilt and doubt crept in. But Claire was patient and understanding, helping me navigate the complexities of moving on from a broken marriage. Despite this, the memories of Emily's betrayal still haunted me. Every corner of the house reminded me of her, of us, of what we used to be. The once warm and welcoming home now felt like a mausoleum of broken dreams. I knew I had to make a change if I wanted to move forward. One evening, after another pleasant dinner with Claire, I broached the subject. I've been thinking about selling the house, I said, my voice hesitant. Claire looked at me, her eyes filled with understanding. If that's what you need to do, then I support you. It's just, everything here reminds me of her, I explained. I need a fresh start, somewhere that doesn't hold so many painful memories. She reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. I'll help you in any way I can, Jake. You're not alone in this. With Claire's encouragement, I contacted a real estate agent and began the process of putting the house on the market. It was a difficult decision, but I knew it was necessary. As I packed up my belongings, I found myself sorting through a mix of emotions: sadness, anger, relief. Each box sealed felt like closing a chapter of my life. One afternoon, while I was packing, Emily showed up unannounced. She stood at the doorway, looking lost and vulnerable. Jake, can we talk? I hesitated, but finally nodded, letting her in. We sat in the living room, the air thick with unresolved tension. I heard you're selling the house, she said quietly. Yeah, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I need to move on. Emily looked down, her eyes filling with tears. I'm sorry for everything, Jake. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want you to know that I regret it every day. I nodded, feeling a pang of old pain. I appreciate that, Emily, but it's too late. What's done is done. Thank you, I said, my voice softer than I intended. I hope you find peace too. With the house on the market, I began looking for a new place to call home. Claire was with me every step of the way, offering advice and helping me navigate the overwhelming process. We spent weekends visiting potential homes, discussing the pros and cons of each one. Her presence made the daunting task feel manageable, even enjoyable. One Saturday, we visited a small, charming house on the outskirts of town. It had a cozy feel, with a beautiful garden and a warm, inviting interior. As we walked through the rooms, I felt a sense of calm and belonging that I hadn't felt in a long time. "What do you think?" Claire asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I think this could be it," I said, smiling. "It feels right." We made an offer, and within a few weeks, the house was mine. Moving day was a whirlwind of activity, but Claire was there, helping me unpack and settle in. As we arranged the furniture and decorated the rooms, the house began to feel like a home, a new beginning free from the shadows of the past. One evening, after everything was in place, Claire and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, a beautiful end to a long day. "Thank you, Claire," I said, turning to her, "for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you." She smiled, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. "You've come a long way, Jake. I'm proud of you." I leaned in and kissed her, the warmth of her lips a promise of a brighter future. With Claire by my side, I was ready to embrace the next chapter of my life. One sunny afternoon, as we were unpacking the last of the boxes, Claire stumbled upon an old photo album tucked away in a corner of my new study. She opened it and began flipping through the pages, smiling at the memories captured within. "Look at you," she teased, pointing to a picture of me from college, my hair a mess of curls and my face sporting a goofy grin. "You were quite the heartthrob." I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Yeah, those were the days." As we continued to look through the album, Claire's phone buzzed with a message. She glanced at it and her face fell. "It's my ex," she said quietly. "He's been trying to get back in touch. He's been saying he wants to talk, to apologize for how things ended," she explained. "But I don't want to open that door again." "Do you need to see him?" I asked. Claire shook her head. "No, I'm happy with you, Jake. I don't want anything to jeopardize that." Her words were reassuring, but a lingering doubt remained. I trusted Claire, but the specter of her past relationship hung over us like a dark cloud. A few days later, while Claire was out running errands, I decided to surprise her by preparing a special dinner. As I was setting the table, my phone rang. It was Emily. "Jake, I know you don't want to hear from me, but this is important," she said, her voice urgent. "What is it?" I asked, wary of what she might say. "Mark's been calling me, saying he wants to make amends," she explained. "I thought you should know in case he tries to contact you." I sighed, frustration bubbling up. "Thanks for the heads up. I'll handle it." After hanging up, I felt a sense of dread settle over me. It seemed like the past wasn't ready to let go just yet. Determined to not let it ruin our evening, I pushed the thoughts aside and focused on preparing the meal. But that night, as we lay in bed, Claire's phone buzzed again. She picked it up and sighed. "It's my ex again. He just won't leave me alone." "Maybe you should block him," I suggested, trying to keep my tone light. "I think I will," she said, turning off her phone and snuggling closer to me. "I don't want anything to come between us." I kissed her forehead, feeling a surge of affection. "Neither do I." Despite our resolve, the next few weeks were fraught with tension. Both our exes seemed determined to reinsert themselves into our lives. Emily called occasionally, ostensibly to check in, but her ulterior motives were clear, and Claire's ex became increasingly persistent, sending messages and even showing up at her workplace. One evening, after another frustrating day dealing with our respective pasts, Claire and I decided to take a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. We needed a break, a chance to escape and reconnect without the shadows of our former relationships looming over us. As we sat by the fireplace on the first night, sipping wine and enjoying the peaceful silence, I felt a sense of contentment I hadn't felt in a long time. The next morning, we decided to go for a hike. The trail was beautiful, winding through tall trees and alongside a sparkling river. We walked hand in hand. As we reached a clearing with a stunning view of the valley below, Claire turned to me, her eyes bright with happiness. "Jake, there's something I need to tell you." I felt a flicker of apprehension. "What is it?" "I love you," she said, her voice steady and sincere. I know we've both been through a lot, but I can't imagine my life without you. Relief and joy washed over me. I love you too, Claire, I said, pulling her into a tight embrace. More than anything. When we returned home, it was time to confront our pasts head-on. Claire decided to file a restraining order against her ex, and I reached out to Mark, setting up a meeting to lay everything to rest. We met at a neutral location. I'm not here to make amends, I said firmly. I'm here to tell you to stay away from me and Emily. We're done. Mark nodded, looking defeated. I understand. I'm sorry for everything. I don't need your apology, I replied coldly. I need you to respect my boundaries. With that, I walked away, feeling a sense of closure. It was time to let go of the past and focus on the future. Claire's restraining order was granted, providing a much-needed sense of security. One evening, as we sat on the porch of our new home watching the sunset, Claire turned to me with a smile. We've come a long way, haven't we? We have, I agreed, taking her hand, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Life with Claire was everything I had hoped for and more. The shadows of our past seemed to finally be behind us, and we had settled into a comfortable routine. Our love for each other grew stronger with each passing day. But just as we started to feel secure, a darker, more sinister chapter began to unfold. One night, as we were having dinner, Claire's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She glanced at it and then back at me, her eyes questioning. Who could that be? I asked, feeling a twinge of unease. I don't know, she replied, answering the call. Her face paled as she listened, her expression turning from confusion to fear. No, this can't be happening, she whispered, ending the call abruptly. What is it? I asked, my voice rising with concern. That was my ex, she said, her voice trembling. He's been released from jail early, and he's coming for me. My blood ran cold. What do you mean he's coming for you? He said he wants to settle things once and for all, Claire said, tears welling up in her eyes. I'm scared, Jake. Claire nodded, and I grabbed my phone, dialing 911. The operator assured us that they would send someone over, but I knew we couldn't just sit and wait. I went to the bedroom and retrieved the gun I kept for self-defense, checking that it was loaded. We'll be safe, I said, trying to reassure Claire as I handed her a smaller handgun from my collection. I won't let anything happen to you. The minutes felt like hours as we waited for the police to arrive. The tension in the air was suffocating. Claire paced back and forth, her eyes darting to the windows and doors while I stood guard, my grip on the gun tight. Then, we heard it, a car pulling up outside. I peeked through the curtains and saw a figure stepping out, moving towards the house. It's him, Claire whispered, her voice shaking. Jake, what are we going to do? Stay calm, I said, though my own heart was pounding. Stay behind me. The figure approached the front door and a loud knock echoed through the house. Claire, I know you're in there, a voice called out, menacing and cold. Come out and face me. I raised my gun, motioning for Claire to stay back. Get out of here, I shouted through the door. The police are on their way. A sinister laugh followed. Do you think I'm afraid of the police? This is between me and Claire. Open the door or I'll break it down. I heard a crashing sound as he kicked the door, and my blood boiled with rage. Stay back, Claire, I repeated, moving closer to the door. I've got this. With another loud crash, the door splintered and the figure forced his way inside. He was holding a gun, his eyes wild with anger. Claire, you think you can hide from me? He snarled. I aimed my gun at him, my hands steady. Drop the gun and get out, I commanded. This is your last warning. He sneered, raising his gun. You think you can stop me? Before he could fire, I pulled the trigger. The sound of the shot echoed through the house, and he staggered back, dropping his gun and clutching his shoulder. He fell to the ground, groaning in pain. Claire ran to my side, her eyes wide with fear and relief. Jake, are you okay? I'm fine, I said, keeping my gun trained on the intruder. Call the police again and tell them to hurry. She nodded, quickly dialing 911. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air, and police officers stormed the house, taking the intruder into custody. As they led him away, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. Claire wrapped her arms around me, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, Jake. You saved me. I hugged her tightly, my own eyes wet with tears. I promised I wouldn't let anything happen to you, I whispered, and I meant it. The police took our statements, assuring us that Claire's ex would be charged with breaking and entering, assault, and attempted murder. It was a terrifying ordeal, but we had faced it together and come out stronger on the other side. That night, as we lay in bed, I held Claire close, feeling a renewed sense of purpose and commitment. Our love had been tested in the most harrowing way, and we had proven that nothing could tear us apart. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we would face it together, ready for whatever challenges came our way. Claire's ex was denied bail, and the restraining order was made permanent. The legal proceedings provided a measure of relief, but the emotional scars ran deep. We knew we needed to take extra steps to ensure our safety and peace of mind. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Claire turned to me, her face thoughtful. "Jake, I've been thinking, maybe we should take some self-defense classes. I don't want to ever feel that helpless again." I nodded, agreeing immediately. "That's a great idea. We should both be prepared to protect ourselves." We found a reputable self-defense instructor and began taking classes together. The physical training was intense, but it also served as a way to channel our fear and anxiety into something productive. One weekend, our instructor organized a simulated home invasion scenario as part of our training. It was a controlled environment with instructors acting as intruders, but it felt all too real. The exercise was designed to test our ability to respond under pressure and apply what we had learned. After the session, we sat in the training room, catching our breath. Claire looked at me, her eyes bright with determination. "We're going to be okay, Jake. We've been through so much, but we've come out stronger." One evening, as we were preparing dinner, there was a knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw a familiar face. It was Mark. I opened the door cautiously. "What do you want, Mark?" He looked tired, his eyes filled with regret. "Jake, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need to talk to you. Please, just hear me out." I hesitated, but Claire touched my arm, nodding. "Let's hear what he has to say." We invited him in, and he sat at the kitchen table, looking more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. "I came to apologize," he began. "I know I messed up, and I hurt you both deeply. I can't change the past, but I want to make amends." I crossed my arms, still wary. "What do you expect us to say, Mark? You betrayed me." He nodded, his expression pained. "I know, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I've been working on myself, going to therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did." Claire and I exchanged a glance, and she spoke up. "Mark, it's good that you're trying to change, but the damage is done. We appreciate your apology, but we need to move forward with our lives." Mark nodded again, tears in his eyes. "I understand. I just needed to say it. I wish you both happiness." The days turned into weeks, and our lives continued to improve. One Saturday morning, Claire and I decided to visit a nearby farmer's market. We strolled hand in hand, enjoying the simple pleasures of the day. As we wandered through the stalls, a small booth caught my eye. It was filled with beautiful handmade jewelry. Claire admired a delicate silver necklace, her eyes lighting up with delight. "It's beautiful," she said, glancing at me. "Let's get it," I replied, smiling. The vendor, an elderly woman with kind eyes, wrapped the necklace carefully. "You two make a lovely couple," she said, handing us the package. That evening, as we sat on the porch watching the stars, Claire turned to me, her eyes filled with love. "Jake, thank you for standing by me through everything. I don't know what I would have done without you." I kissed her gently, feeling the warmth of her love surround me. "We'll always have each other, Claire, no matter what."